From now until the 28th, code Espresso gets you 30% off your entire G Fuel order. Restock, try a new flavor, whatever it is, follow the link in the description below, or use code Espresso over on the website and net yourself that nice 30% off discount. Pending no surprise extension here of the 2v2 alpha for Modern Warfare, by the time this video goes up, it should be all said and done with, all things should be over. And by this point, you probably have a decent understanding of how you feel with the game, at least in the 2v2 aspect. Not everything will translate over exactly from the 2v2 game mode to what we end up seeing in full 6v6, 10v10, 20v20, and so on and so forth. We talked about that a few days ago, where this 2v2 game mode is a lot more methodical, more so than any other game mode outside of, say, Search and Destroy and maybe Cyber Attack within the full game modes on offer. But what we end up seeing here at this is honestly a lot of fun. So today I wanted to give you guys my honest feedback, a kind of critical review of Modern Warfare 2v2 and what we've seen so far during the alpha. We'll talk about the good and the bad, and it's more than likely going to happen that I'm going to forget something on either side of the spectrum here, because there's so much that I want to talk about in this video today. So apologies if I do miss out on something. Feel free to comment down below what you guys want to add to the good or bad and what you experienced with this down in the comments. Let's try and keep it civil, but we're going to break it all down here for you guys and my thoughts. If you guys want to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare and all things Call of Duty, hit that subscribe button. I'm really excited to jump into a new year of content here in just a little bit of time now at this point. So stick around if you guys are new, but that said, let's talk about the good first. Probably the biggest thing here that I am absolutely floored by, and this kind of ties into the second thing as well, was that it was a random drop of this, and it was unexpected by many. There was that rumor, yeah, but nothing was really confirmed up until obviously Monday with the Gamescom announcement. It was the first time that we'd seen something like this drop almost out of nowhere. Things like the Blackout beta were a first in their own right, but had a ton of pre-promo for that. This was kind of just out of the blue, where we learned about it and then 3 days later we were playing it. There wasn't any huge buildup of anticipation or anxiousness, it just kind of happened, and I thought that was really cool. And I think that that leads into the second point here that I want to talk about, that shows the confidence that Infinity Ward has in this project and in their work. The beta is usually when we see the games jump into the hands of the public and all things, and we start to see the feedback roll out and such, but to me, this is definitely a power move. I talked with the devs about it, it's been said in the live streams and interviews and such, but the game was in development with no changeover or no internal turmoil since before the end of Infinite Warfare's primary year of support. This game has gone the full distance in that 3-year dev window and then some, with no changeover that would mess up the developmental timeline. And from the whispers out there in the community, that's the first time out of the last 3 titles that's actually happened. They're ready for this game to launch, and they're so confident and happy with their work that they were just like, it. Let's do it. Let's throw it down out there for players to experience. Firsthand, I know these guys are stoked to release this game. I know how excited they are. Fun little story here. I sat at the bar with Joel Emsley the night before the reveal with a few other creative friends, and he kept bringing up how badly he wished the game was out already, that he'd just have some time to kill at home and just want to grind out the game. To me, that is a great sign that a man that can work 8 to 10 hour days every single day here for years on end on the same project still wants to go home and play the game even more. This entire alpha was just a big power play to say they're ready and they want it to be October already, so you know they mean business. But other than that, from just a sort of developmental and community standpoint, the open lines of communication I absolutely loved as well. I don't know how long this is going to keep up. We saw this with Black Ops 4 last year during the betas for not only MP but also Blackout, where there was daily updates on Reddit, daily updates on Twitter, dev discussion on those platforms as well, and then it kind of went by the wayside once the game, I don't know, hit December, January, February. I would love to see this kind of stuff continue all year. Sometimes it truly is not practical to take feedback that much in such large quantities. So I understand there's probably going to be some back steps here for this, but I hope that there's at least the transparency on the ideas for why things were brought to fruition, the idea for why something was changed from X to Y or something like that in terms of balancing. But right now, I'm absolutely loving that they're so interactive with the community on this project so far. I love it. Anyways, though, talking the actual gameplay, how it actually feels, some things that are great, some things that we'll see once we get to that aren't so great. Firstly, I think that it's honestly really smooth. I was actually surprised to see that from at least the avenues that I've checked, people seem to actually be pretty cool with the movement. I know that that was a big concern seeing some of the gameplay very early on and talking about it a little further. So having now had the ability for this to be in every player's hands on PlayStation 4, I think that it worked out pretty well. And I still, again, think that I adjusted pretty quickly. I think you guys probably will as well if you haven't already played. And other things that are just absolutely smooth. I love the animations on the weapons. I don't know about you guys, but I thought that they looked insanely clean. Reload animations, running animations. It felt fluent. Mark Grigsby, if you and the team are out there, you guys did a fantastic job on this stuff. I also love the level of options that players had, not only just in terms of the settings and everything, because there are a lot of settings in game that go above and beyond what we are maybe normally used to within Call of Duty settings. I love that kind of stuff also, but even just showcasing some of the options in game to the player base at large, I think that's fantastic. The people that played the reveal build, the people that played the stuff back in May whenever we had that behind closed doors press event, that is such a small percentage of players compared to the global populace. And to be now able to see some of these options that we've been talking about for so long, and to allow players to get their hands on the things like single fire versus auto fire being a standard thing that you don't have to adjust anything in terms of your class setup for, I think that kind of stuff is really cool. Granted, there's still tons more on the way in terms of the customization because we couldn't pick our operators, we couldn't create our classes with the gunsmith and all that kind of stuff, but it is something that even just the small teasers now of this, seeing the versatility of weapons, seeing the functionality and features such as that single fire versus auto fire, or such as the mounting, that stuff is really cool to finally be able to experience as a general populace. Another thing that I absolutely loved is that weapons feel rewarding. One of the big ones that I will always say is the most rewarding is the 50 GS, or the Desert Eagle. This was probably my favorite weapon to play in the entire 2v2 alpha. There was a small handful of weapons. I thought we'd get a little more, but we ended up not. But the 50 GS was thankfully a part of that, and that thing is an absolute powerhouse, and if you're accurate, it rewards you like none other. Because yes, you can end up single-shotting players with a sniper or a shotgun, but the Desert Eagle is only a one shot to the head, and so therefore, if you can one-tap somebody from across the map or even halfway across it, dude, that is the most satisfying feeling ever. Getting kills in this game definitely does feel a lot more rewarding than other games as of recent years, and I love that. That feel may just be a honeymoon phase and might be something that come a couple of months down the line I don't really care too much for, but as it stands right now, I loved it. And talking weapons a little bit further, they actually feel really well balanced and really well polished. I'll start out with that statement actually. I stuck by this since May, and I still stand by this. The build that we have right now in terms of polishing and how it feels, I think could go toe-to-toe with Black Ops 4, with World War II, or any other Call of Duty title out there, and it makes a bigger statement whenever I said it back in May because we were still so far out from launch, and there was still so much that was being added into the game at that point, but it truly does feel ready to go in my books. If the game launched today, I think that yes, there would be some balancing issues because anytime you drop something to millions of players, there's going to be exponential testing that you could never accomplish within the studio just because of sheer brute force of those numbers. But it just feels good. We'll see the cons that there are some of these when we talk about the bad, but for the most part, the biggest thing to me is that for weapon balancing, rifles feel like rifles, SMGs feel like SMGs, LMGs feel like LMGs, and so on. Each category of weapon has their own pros and cons, and you can legitimately feel them. For example, the one thing that I absolutely hated about Black Ops 4 is that you could use, I'm going to use the Titan for example, or the Tiger Shark for example, you could have some of the highest damage weapons in LMGs and abuse them with the movement system and the ADS speeds to the point where they acted almost like a standard rifle. And then you add in that mobility that would rival that of a rifle, get around the map that quickly, and then have that damage and still be able to pull your gun up almost in comparison, again, identical to a rifle or an SMG. That would make the setup act that no setup like that should ever act. An LMG should not be that quick in any capacity. LMGs in this game, for example, are slow moving, slow to bring up, but insanely powerful. It matches the MO of an LMG. And I feel like that inner category of weapons is, for the most part, true to what each class should offer. Granted, of course, we don't really see how cross-classifications work in gunfights just yet, minus the overkill of the AX-50 and the M13 that played out in one of those builds. So far, we've only just gone up classification to classification, like pistol versus pistol or rifle versus rifle. So we'll see how that stuff plays out in the beta, but right now, I'm pretty happy with where most are. And the final thing we'll talk about in terms of good is that of the maps are unique and offer something for each one that we've seen. Docks ended up offering a little bit of a different change up for that verticality. King offered a little bit of a central power point where players will gravitate towards in that upper plateau. Pine will offer some different windows in terms of, well, Head Glitch City, and you end up getting the picture here with this. Each one is not really copy and paste by any regards and have some features that dictate how they'll play differently than another map. And I think that is really great to see, especially this early on when we still have probably a half dozen, maybe even more maps for 2v2 alone coming in the near future. But anyways, that's a lot of positive, sure, but what about the negative, the downside, the bad? Well, firstly, I noticed that there is a ton of head glitching, and that's something that truly has been in Call of Duty every single year, but this was something that definitely had a little bit more of an irritating factor here to it. I don't know if it's because, of course, that it's such a small map, there's not much room to hide, but then people will abuse those head glitches. I don't know, but I don't remember this really being in the regular gameplay as much, but naturally, first impressions are everything. For me, I've had that fortune of being able to play the rest of the game and seeing that not really everybody sticks to 2v2 style head glitching and sitting back, but for a lot of players, that's their first entry and impression on what the game will offer. Now, while I am hopeful that my memory serves correctly, that it's not really a big issue, it still is a big issue in 2v2 for what's been presented. On screen right now, you'll probably see some clips from throughout the community in which it's just actually kind of crazy how head glitchy it is, because normally when you see head glitches, it's a little bit more than just the very tip of the soldiers' helmets, but this time around, it actually is that little that you can end up seeing, but they can end up seeing your entire exposed character model. And that kind of leads into the next thing I want to talk about. I feel like right now, the in-game cameras are a bit off and Peeker's advantage is a little bit too much. I had one situation where, yes, it's a kill cam. Kill cams are never accurate. Bear that in mind. They end up trying to piece together played back, saved footage, but oftentimes are nowhere near accurate. I had one situation where I died where I couldn't see the player at all, but whenever I watched it back, he was directly in front of me. And I've seen that happen quite a few times where a player, again, maybe say in a head glitch, you only see the very tip of their helmet, but then they end up shooting your entire body. Or again, something where a player jumps around a corner, but they're dead before the player getting shot at ever sees them. That kind of stuff I'm hoping gets some fixing. And yes, some of it does come down to kill cams not being accurate, but also it does have a little bit of a Peeker's advantage being a little too strong, I think, here at this point. Another thing that was slightly bothersome was that of the shell shock and the gray screen after you took some damage, and it was just a bit too much for my liking. The color scale changes I'm totally okay with. I can deal with that, but the complete loss of audio for that long a time frame is what's the issue. That could really end up taking away from your chance of winning a gunfight or maybe clutching up a round. Maybe you end up trading some damage, but you end up getting a kill and then it's a 1v1, but then because you can't hear for the next 5 to 10 seconds, they could be right behind you, whereas you could easily turn around and take them out. Now, fun fact, this actually shouldn't happen for the rest of the game, but in 2v2 it's an issue because that's what's meant to happen only before you regen your health. So about after 3 to 5 seconds, it would be completely done with and go away, and you'd regen your health back up to normal. But since it's 2v2, you can't regen your health unless you're given the luck of the draw that gives you a stim. So it's like the kind of two systems are at conflict with each other, and the downside of the one shines more as the result of them kind of butting heads. Now, I said we'd come back to weapon balancing in the sense that some don't really feel right, but this is something that will be fixed in time. Same with the next thing we'll talk about as well. Weapon balancing in particular, some weapons are probably well below where you think they should be. The one that always comes to my mind when I think of weapons so far in the 2v2 alpha is the M19, and actually, from what it seems like, it might have actually gotten a very, very slight buff, not something too substantial that'll make it OP or anything like that, but the M19 pre-patched, if it ended up being patched and then where we are now, is something where it took 5, 6, 7 shots sometimes to end up securing a kill, and that is, when you break down the damage, very minimal. I get that a pistol is a pistol and it's not supposed to be something that is super lethal, but that's something where I've actually run out of ammo trying to end up getting kills in rounds where it's just the M19, because we'll end up focusing fire on one player and then we'll end up getting that kill, but then we'll run out of ammo because it takes X amount of time to either register or we miss a couple of shots or whatever it may be. But statistically speaking, it seemed like it definitely had the slowest time to kill out of all of them, and of course the lowest damage properties, so didn't really give you a fighting chance. That's the one that always comes to my mind, but weapon balancing, again, could use some slight tweaks and work and will be taken into account for not only just this, but also the full beta and then the full launch come October. And the same thing also goes for Footstep audio. They seemed relatively inconsistent, where you could hear your footsteps at an ungodly loud level, but then your enemies, which even if they're right next to you, they could sneak up and not make any noise at all, even if they're running. That's something that's happened in Ashton Williams from Infinity Ward has confirmed that this has been fixed out and the levels have been adjusted on bringing down your own footsteps and increasing the enemy footsteps for the beta. So that'll be something that, of course, is already confirmed to change, but we just haven't seen just yet. The final thing that I really didn't like was the fact that, well, it was PlayStation 4 exclusive. I really think this would have been absolutely great for everybody to get their hands on. Just an open alpha for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. I think that would have been fantastic. I think, again, having just a 3-day announcement here from when it was announced to when you could play it, I think that could have possibly broken the internet in some capacity. Maybe not so much so to the point where, like, I don't know. The literal term of that is just so strange. I don't know why I used it. But regardless, the exclusivity was something that I'm almost entirely certain this was out of the control from anybody at Infinity Ward and even Activision. Crossplay is a huge thing to this team and what they're excited for, and I see this 100% as a petty move by Sony for what's to come in the lack of the exclusives minus that 7-day exclusive for DLC's first moves. They're trying to suck anything out that they can from the contract with the franchise, or at least that's the way that I see it. Having, again, some first-hand knowledge that the developers are super into the idea of crossplay, they're really excited to share that with everybody. I know for a fact this wasn't their call. I can't even see it being something that Activision is delegating either, because crossplay is a huge thing for them as well. It just seems to be one of those things where, I don't know, maybe I'm entirely off base, but I think it was a PlayStation and Sony thing more so than anything else. But I really do hope that there's something announced that maybe Xbox One and PC can get their hands on this as well. But if not, I hope those next couple of weeks go by really fast. But anyways, overall, I really do enjoy Modern Warfare's 2v2 Alpha. It is something that does play differently than that of the full standard multiplayer experience of, say, 6v6 and 10v10 and 20v20, as you'll see later on. But it was something that was a fun little surprise, and I think that for this past weekend, it's definitely spiced some things up. I love the clips that I've been seeing on Twitter. I love the feedback I've been seeing on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, and all those places. And I'm really excited that people actually finally got their hands on a little earlier than many anticipated. But anyways, that's where we're going to wrap it up. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Is there anything in particular that you necessarily greatly agree with? Anything you greatly disagree with? Whatever it may be, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare. Again, we're going to be pumping out a bunch of content here as we draw ever so closer to the launch. One day at a time. I really wish I could just make a time machine and go faster, but subscribe if you guys are new. If you guys want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But other than that, thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.